tape. Okay. So let's do a little meditation. Still one more person coming in, looks like. Let them come in first. Slowly extricate yourself from other thoughts and put all of your attention on the breathing without controlling it. And even more radically, bring your attention down to your heart area, away from your head, and just watch the mind. Through the force of familiarity, try to recall what you're looking for, the clear light nature beyond the objective thoughts, beyond even the appearance of the mind, which itself is a thought. The oceanic nature of our mind, like a vast, clear ocean of crystalline water. Is very subtle. And as we've usually just paid attention outwardly and to the thoughts and emotions within it, it's something we're not used to focusing on. Whether you think of it as the close placement of mindfulness on the mind itself, or as the meditation on Mahamudra or Dzogchen. Without conceptualizing, try to just perceive that clear nature. It's not merely a state of having no thoughts, but within that state having a discriminating awareness. It's recognizing what this nature is, trying to discern, to perceive this nature of the mind within that non-conceptualizing state. Let go of the sense of the body and your attention to any of the other senses, sight and sound and so forth. See if you still perceive this sense of an observer, even within this quiet of the mind. What we might begin to recognize as the appearance of some autonomous self, self-existent, truly existent self-identity. The Buddha said that self that appears to our mind as though findable somewhere within our body and mind, that's an illusion. Although it appears, it doesn't exist that way. Like a reflection. And thinking, since beginningless time, we've been under the influence of adhering to that self, believing it, grasping to it, basic ignorance that has kept us creating negative karma. And that ignorance has been allied with a set of complexes of thoughts that we can call the self-cherishing attitude, wanting to protect the self, wanting it to be happy, this self that we've believed in. living beings still enmeshed in samsara, and even the arhats that are free of samsara are under the influence of one or both of those. Ignorance or self-cherishing thought, or both. If we look at our own plight, often oblivious of our incredible fortune of having a life of leisure and endowment, not recognizing like a buffalo being taken off to slaughter, that we're approaching death every instant. Caught up in the appearances of this lifetime, even though we want to practice Dharma. What of other sentient beings that have not met the Dharma? Completely believing that they have found the way to happiness sometimes, or despondent, depressed, not seeing any hope, angry, aggressive. I think for the welfare of the world, of all living beings, throughout numberless world systems, other universes, I'm going to conquer these two demons of my heart, the self-cherishing thought and the ignorance grasping to a truly existent I. Principally so that I can benefit all living beings who are numberless compared to myself. My own problems are nothing compared to the sufferings of others. And for that reason, with confidence in the Buddha, the Guru Buddhas, the Dharma that Buddha taught, and the Sangha jewel, those beings, Arya beings that have realized selflessness directly. I'm going to participate in the class tonight. For that goal of getting closer to enlightenment, for the welfare of all sentient beings. And relax. Bring your attention back. Okay, now I see who came in late. So how are you doing? How are you finding the text so far?
Do you mind copies of the text to purchase? Do you know? Because there weren't when I asked them.
There should be. We should petition the Venerable Tsomo. I don't know where she is right now. But there are more texts, and you should have a copy. If we don't find one tonight, you can borrow my copy, okay? But don't look at all my notes. No, you can look at the notes, of course you can. Okay, so any questions? Any questions about? Yeah.
I have a question to you directly related to text.
Maybe my answer won't be directly related to your question. Then. No, I'm joking.
It's my understanding that the definition of an Arya being is one who has seen emptiness directly or has perceived directly the emptiness of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
Are there levels of Arya beings, or is it, as I thought, once I heard a teaching, it's like you're either a virgin or you're not. There's many in between. You either have seen it,
Interesting
or you
analogy.
haven't seen it.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that was that black and white.
Okay.
So,
The big A, Arya being. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Then recently had a debate with someone who said that there are levels.
Of Arya beings.
Yeah.
And that threw you for a loop.
Yeah.
You thought, uh-oh, this has got to be wrong.
Well, I didn't think it was necessarily wrong, other than,
Okay, so what?
if you've seen emptiness, you've either seen it or you haven't.
Okay, so what's the? If someone we'll start with your assumption. Say an Arya being is someone who's realized emptiness directly, which I think is right. In fact, you could say, some people would say, does see emptiness directly. It depends on the different colleges how they would phrase it, because you might say, well, wait, they can be moments when they're not seeing it directly, but some people would say they still, because they've seen it and that continuity of realization is in their continuum, they still are said to, they're beings who see emptiness directly, sometimes. Okay, so what's the end state of that? You know, if you become an Arya, is that all that happens? I mean, can you go any higher than Arya, or?
Oh, sure. That's kind of like now you become a stream enter, and then you habituate on the path, and you begin to get rid of all of the rest of
Stream enter.
Isn't that right?
And then what happens after that?
Well, it's the path of habituation, where you still, just because you've seen emptiness directly doesn't mean that you have gotten rid of all of your glaciers. But you continue to.
He didn't say all of your Claytons, don't worry. Glaciers. He looks surprised. Right? Well, I think you're answering your own question, aren't you?
Well,
You said, is when one attains the state of being an Arya, someone told you that there were levels of Arya, and you thought this should be like democracy. You're either you're an American or you're not, you're a virgin or you're not, or something like that.
no, I do believe that you continue to progress on the path, but either you have seen emptiness or you haven't, and that's the definition of an Arya being, is it not?
An Arya being defining characteristic is one who's realized emptiness directly, yeah. But there are levels of Aryas, because there are levels of the supporting merit that a person has and the qualities that are in their continuum. Just as you were saying, there are 4 kinds of Aryas.
But you don't have to hold it, you don't have to be able to be in emptiness all the time.
You want to be able to still win that argument with the person, even though you're starting to see. There are 4 levels of Arya, right? You remember? Stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, arhat, you could say. That's like in the Hinayana tradition. More precisely in the Mahayana, like we talked about in the seminar a couple of weeks ago, in the Salam seminar, when one attains the path of seeing in the Mahayana, because we're talking about the Mahayana thought training, so the Bodhisattva would be the person we're talking about. That's a slightly different path than the path that the Hinayana practitioners are following, right?
Right.
They're eliminating on the path of seeing and on the path of meditation or habituation, however you'd like to translate it. On those paths, they are eliminating the klesha, the delusions or afflictions, basically ego grasping and all of its ramifications. The Mahayana Arya, also from the path of seeing and on the path of meditation, begins to eliminate those. But the Mahayana Arya, the Bodhisattva, Arya Bodhisattva, they eliminate the all of the klesha, the delusions, before they reach the 10th bhumi. They eliminate them by the time they finish the 7th bhumi. The end of the 7th bhumi, the beginning of the 8th bhumi, they've eliminated all of the klesha, the delusions. And on the last 3 bhumis, the 8th, 9th, and 10th levels, so there are levels. That's what we talk about, bhumis. You could translate bhumi as levels. You know, you've heard about a first bhumi bodhisattva. That's an arya. The arya path starts with the first bhumi. So the person you were debating with could probably have some good ammunition there. Don't, you know, if we don't want me to tell them that, okay. But you may have a coffee bet on this one or something. On those bhumis, there are differences in the realization is the same. The emptiness that they're perceiving is the same, but the supporting mind and the samadhi and the collection of merit and the qualities and so forth that are supporting that consciousness are different. And so they are said to be levels.
Yes.
And so the Aryas do have, I would say, do have levels because we talk about the bodhisattva bhumis, the bodhisattva levels.
But once you have seen emptiness directly, you can be labeled an Arya being.
That's true. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that wins your argument, though.
That wins me.
That wins your argument, okay. Bonnie, you.
Is it possible that an Arya being, without having the supporting merit, something could happen to them in this life, and then in the next life, they would be unaware?
Of emptiness?
Yes.
What do you think?
I didn't hear it all.
She was asking if you were to say an Arya being, someone who one lifetime realizes emptiness, and then because of some condition, maybe, as Bonnie said, maybe the lack of accumulation of merit or something like that, in the next life or in the future life, they forget that. They sort of go, emptiness? Yeah, some period. Emptiness? What's that?
No.
So Venerable says no.
No.
You don't say no?
I say,
You do say no.
once you've seen it, you've seen it.
So once you're a virgin, you're a virgin. Okay? Can't go back. What do you think? Can't you fall? Can't you fall from that realization? We talk about arhats. Sometimes in the Hinayana tradition, they talk about arhats who've fallen from arhatship. Do we accept that in the Mahayana? Do you know? Or even in some of the Abhidharma teachings, they say the Hinayana tenets that hold that particular idea are incorrect. That's not the Buddha's intention at all. If one has become an arhat and eliminated all the stains from the mind, there's no way you can fall from that. If you've eliminated the stains from the mind through meditation, through the path of meditation, not through just a worldly path that subdues them and suppresses them for some period of time. Also, the Arya path, when you achieve the path of seeing, you achieve a realization that can't be eliminated because that what you achieve is true cessation, and true cessation is one of the things that's permanent. It doesn't change moment by moment. Once you've eliminated delusions from the root, they can't come back again. So there's no way that there could be intellectual delusions about emptiness. You could still, in a future life, having realized emptiness, say if just on the first bhumi, in the next lifetime after that, it doesn't mean that you're immediately meditating on emptiness. It would depend, I think, on a lot of things. I'm not at that level, so I don't know. But I think it's possible that a person can be refamiliarized with how to meditate and how to think about that, because there's still delusions in the mind. There's still ego grasping. When you've realized emptiness directly, it doesn't mean that all the ego grasping of your mind is eliminated completely, right? You still have ignorance grasping to true existence. What you've eliminated, first of all, is the first layer of that could be called intellectually formed. Intellectually formed delusions, intellectually formed grasping at true existence on the path of seeing in the first bhumi. And then later you start to eliminate more and more layers, like taking the layers off an onion of grasping to true existence. So I think later the person still, and there would be moments when a person might be still grasping, they would have moments of grasping to true existence, but not to the intensity that we do. And there is the need to continue to practice. So some bodhisattvas will take longer and some will take less time, depending on their how do you say, their enthusiastic perseverance and and the conditions they find themselves in due to karma and everything. So I think Venerable's right. You can't, when you realize that, you can't fall. How about when you realize bodhicitta? We talked about this before. Can you fall from having?
Yes.
Really? So this Arya Bodhisattva could lose their bodhicitta?
Well, I do believe that you can, yeah.
The Arya Bodhisattva could, what do you think?
Yes.
Fall back up to about the fifth building?
Unfortunately.
No, I don't think so. We were saying in the Salam class, it said that at the very, very beginning of the path, even before the bhumis, just on the path of accumulation, the bodhisattva path, if there are 5 paths: path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, path of no more learning. And the first path has 3 parts. You could divide it up into 3 parts. There's sort of like when you go to Starbucks, you can get small, medium, and large, right? Do they give more? I think they even get, maybe you get, what is it? Extra grande. When I was in North Carolina once, I remember Dr. Brown took me out to the Starbucks one morning, and he had a depth charge put in his. Oh, that was really nice. It's an extra shot of espresso. Have you heard of that? So anyway, the path of accumulation has 3 parts. So on the smallest part of the path of accumulation, one is actually bodhisattva, one is developed bodhicitta, but it has not been stabilized. In the Prajnaparamita Sutras, it's called earth-like bodhisattva, earth-like bodhicitta. The second part of that path of accumulation, the middling part, is called gold-like. It's become immutable. So it is possible to fall from the achievement of bodhicitta on the very first path, but on the path of seeing, no way. There's no way they can lose their bodhicitta. There are different levels, I'm sure, of the strength of bodhicitta and the compassion of the bodhisattvas. Not everyone's exactly the same. Okay, good question.
What's that prayer that goes, that the bodhicitta that has not been arisen, not declined, etc.?
Right. This dedication prayer, we often say that's from the prayer of Samantabhadra, the aspiration of Samantabhadra. That prayer, Jangchub Semcho Grimpoche Make Panam Kegachik Kepam Nyapa Mebayang Goneguntu Pelwasho. That prayer, that verse, that stanza is just, it's talking about our bodhicitta, and may whatever bodhicitta we have, because we have some kind of bodhicitta, it may not be spontaneous bodhicitta, but if you correctly meditate, you can say there's something. You have a mental image of bodhicitta, and so that state that's perceiving, aspiring, trying to aspire for the welfare of others to become Buddha, that could be called bodhicitta. It's not actual bodhicitta. We're not actual bodhisattvas yet. There could be a debate about, okay, what if you take the bodhisattva vow? Diane, have you taken bodhisattva vow? So you're a bodhisattva?
No.
Because some people, in some tenets, some people say, I've seen some texts that alluded to this, that maybe in the Sakya tradition somewhere, or maybe some interpretations say that if you have taken the bodhisattva vow, you're a bodhisattva. From the Gelugpa point of view, from Lama Tsongkhapa's point of view, that would be kind of not very precise. You have to have spontaneous bodhicitta to actually be called a real bodhisattva. I mean, we could be labeled a bodhisattva if you have some similarity to bodhicitta. So how about the text itself?
I'm still a little confused about bodhicitta question.
What's that?
You told us once the story of the monk who was asked to cut off his hand, and then when he did so and offered it to the other person, they insulted him for handing his right hand to them with the left hand.
Right.
And because of that, his bodhicitta declined and
Right.
suffered the consequences.
Right.
So are we?
Do you know who that monk was?
I forgot.
That's supposed to be Shariputra, one of the 2 disciples of Buddha. Because in that life, when the Buddha attained enlightenment, he was one of the hearers. He was as Rinpoche was talking about the last couple of days, he was the one renowned for wisdom. And the other main disciple, Maha Madgalyana, that the Tibetans very compassionately just call Mogulpu. Instead of saying all these long, Madgalyana, it's like a mouthful for me. So, Mogulpu. Pu means putra, and Pu means like son in Tibetan, so the putra, they say. So, Maha Madgalyana was the best of the Buddha's disciples in psychic powers. He's the one that, when he went begging, he would be able to perceive where people had been, what relationship they'd had in the past and things like that with the psychic powers. So Shariputra, there's an allusion to this story I mentioned in Shantideva's Bodhisattva Charyavatara when he says, only the Buddhas can explain how someone, once having taken the aspiration, taken up the vow to become enlightened for the welfare of all sentient beings, how someone like that who gives it up could ever reach high status again. Only the Buddhas can explain that. In other words, the negativity of giving up bodhicitta is so great. Of course, it doesn't mean that you can't. Of course, the person will, again, prosper spiritually at some point. But the negativity of giving that up is so great that it will take a long time. And so he, in the commentaries to that verse, it's alluding to the story of Shariputra in a very distant life in the past, when he had achieved the first part of the path of accumulation, just the earth-like bodhicitta. And it was not yet the right time to give his own body. It has to be, a bodhisattva has to know the right time, like Rinpoche was using yesterday when he was talking about astrology or whatever, the right time. Also, you can understand it, things like that. There's a time to do things. Also, the bodhisattva on the path of accumulation, that's not the right time to give their body freely. They have to be very judicious about how they gave it. On the path of seeing, the body transforms, it said, and their body it takes on the aspect of being a mental body. In the Prajnaparamita it says yiki lu, yiki rangshin yi lu, I think, a body of the nature of the mind. And there's no pain even to cut their body and to give to someone else. But at this level, because the pain can be so great, and as the bodhicitta is not stabilized, they could give that up. Does that answer your thing? Okay. But no particular questions. Have you found these verses so far useful? Have you like in your actual everyday practice? Are they too challenging? No? Not too challenging? Useful. Yeah, I think so. I think if you read this again and again, I mean, the Tibetans would have memorized it because it would be in meter and so forth. If you read it again and again and try to get familiar with these and try to learn the meaning of the verses, then I think can be a great resource. That's why our teachers, Lama Sopa Rinpoche, particularly wanted us to study this text. So, last time, where did we get up to? 10? Verse 10? Did we okay. 12, that's right, because I remember said next time I'd mention just something, a little bit about that in terms of, when we do the Nyungne, you know what Nyungne is? The fasting puja? Nyung means to fast, Ne means to abide. So to abide in the fast or the puja that's done, especially with regard to Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, where one fasts in body, speech, and mind. You've done Nyungne. You fast in body by not eating. You fast in speech by not engaging in any kind of frivolous talk. You can recite the prayers and so forth. And you fast in mind by trying not to let the mind wander and just to keep the visualizations of the sadhana and so forth, keep the mind in a virtuous space. So that's said to help to purify the negative karma that we've created. It's not the only reason, but one of the very powerful ways to purify negative karma that we've created with respect to food. and craving for food in previous lives that cause us to be born as pretas, as hungry ghosts, and not to have access to food. So you can almost understand, when you engage in any kind of, when you experience any kind of, how do you say, suffering of lacking something, lacking friends, you're not loved, or lacking whatever, whether it be food or whatever. The causes are karmic, and by thinking of these examples to try to change that, to use that situation as a condition to enhance your spiritual practice rather than letting it be something that depresses you. This is what Lama Zopa Rinpoche and our gurus relish so much, And it's something that goes beyond the asceticism of the Hinayana path. It's a way to transform that situation, not just to say, not just to renounce worldly things, but now this is going on to another level of experiencing these sufferings for the welfare of others. Having that kind of courageous mind, being able to transform it. So this one, the 12th verse says, "When I am tormented by extreme hunger and thirst, it is a weapon of my own evil deeds, negative karma, turned upon me for swindling, stealing, and acting miserly. From now on I shall willingly take all hunger and thirst upon myself." In the text itself, where here it says swindling, stealing, and acting miserly, I think another way we could translate it is the two. What is it?
Is the wheel of sharp weapons returning?
Yeah, there's a wheel of sharp weapons returning. But here it says, Tam dang kutok serna chepai. There's the first one. One of them is fraud, or what's it translated as here? Swindling. And then there's two things. Kua means to steal, and tokpa means kind of like to take with force. So you can, the Tibetans make in Indian language also, we make a distinction between the kind of thieves that steal things, like they come in your house at night and they don't necessarily hurt anyone, they just take, or you take something, pickpockets, take something out of your pocket, or the person who comes up with a knife or a gun in the street, or they actually, they come in and they take things away from you. Okay, so both, these are things that we've done in the past. Sometimes even now we might have taken some things like that, or we've cheated or swindled others in some way. And because of this is like that wheel of sharp weapons, like that boomerang weapon we've tossed out, and we've created that negative karma. Now, sooner or later, it's going to come back to us. One of the, when we've created negative karma like that, one of the effects is to be born in the lower realms. And even when we're born as a human again, there are 3 other effects, results that can come up. Do you remember this? Do you know, what are the 4 effects, Venerable, of any karmic action? Do you know, Venerable? Well, there's a good verse for you coming up here, I think, here. Something about when the mind is unclear and...
I do know, but I can't really think.
Okay, who do you know? Given her, you?
Well, so the 4 results, one would be to, like with the 10 virtues, one would be to be reborn in the lower realms.
Do you know what that's called?
Oh,
Do you know
the
it?
names. I don't know the names. I can say the title.
That's when we create throwing karma, it has 4 results. So that's not just called, that's called, that first result of that can cause us rebirth in one of the realms is called the maturation result, or the maturation effect. Okay? Now, so say for instance, if we swindle or stolen or pillaged in the past, taken, robbed, we may have already been born in the lower realms if that karma has ripened, but there's still 3 other results that can take place in other realms. Some of it in the human realm, not necessarily in the human realm, but some of it can ripen even in the human realm. One of the other effects, what are you going to say?
Isn't one of them that your mind is habituated to do that more? And
Right.
And then your physical, like, the place where you live can have effects on that.
There's something like that. Mhm.
And I think the other is like body, but I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Okay,
I'm
good.
not sure about that.
So one way of dividing it, one can divide it, in some of the sutras it says there are 3 effects. So you might say, well, wait a second. Why are you saying that? They just said there were 4 effects. Because one of the effects is divided into 2. So how many do you have then?
4.
4, right? Okay. So this is called the maturation. Let's say the thumb is the maturation effect. This is called the effect similar to the cause. So that has 2 parts. And then there's the we could call it the environmental effect or the dominant effect. That's the one you were talking about, the place that you might find yourself born into. Even with, and I don't mean the realm, but even within a realm, whether you're born in a muddy place or a place with thorns or war or peace or beautiful pine, beautiful redwood trees or whatever. So the middle one here, the effect similar to the cause. Do you know the divisions of that?
Experiencing the life thing, and then what she said is having that habit to act out.
Right, so that the effect similar to the cause has 2 names. It's the effect similar to the cause as an action, and the effect similar to the cause as a experience. Does that make sense? What would be the effects? Say, for instance, if I stole, what would be the effect, the result, similar to that cause, which is an action?
Being robbed.
Being
Wanting to always steal.
wanting to steal again, having the habit energy for that mindset to arise to steal again. That would be the similar to the effects as an action. Okay, the result similar to the cause as an experience would be what? Being robbed, stolen, having things stolen from you. Okay. So here, this is just talking about one of the results that we notice. When we notice something like that, we can start to think, wow, I must have experienced maybe the maturation effect of this already. If indeed there was one, probably there was one. But there may still be other results that have not yet been experienced, such as my habit energy to to swindle and steal. In this case, when we're talking about verse 12, stealing and taking things from others, I can still have the habit energy to do that. The fact that I'm experiencing this outer result means that there certainly are other kinds of results still around. Okay. So I shall willingly take all the hunger and thirst upon myself. So this again, all of these verses now are giving us advice how to practice Tonglen. Do you remember what Tonglen meant? Yeah. Tongwa means to give, Lenpa means to take. So it means here, when you actually are experiencing something, and you don't have to visualize taking on the suffering, but here what you do is you willingly, what's another way of saying that? Willingly experience that. Voluntarily experience that. Without sort of, I shouldn't be experiencing this. Happily, one experiences that. One of the ways that's useful to think is that one is not punishing oneself, but punishing the self-cherishing thought. Making the egoistic thought that's always thinking of oneself first and not wanting to experience any kind of suffering, making it experience that, because that can begin to erode over time. And imagining taking on, by my experiencing this, may others be free of that suffering. Right now, imagining is with visualization. Remember in the Tonglen meditation, imagining black smoke coming, saying, taking away all of the suffering of others being deprived of what they want. All of their suffering of having things stolen or not getting what they want, all of that's absorbing to the self-cherishing thought. so one can combine all of these verses with that kind of meditation.
George, is it helpful or is it actually detrimental to the practice to think of, because in a very real way, the suffering that you take if you do that is suffering of others that are actually your mental continuum in the future? Is that, so to think of it in that way, like understanding that I have created this, and now if I joyfully experience this, I'm going to exhaust the negative karma that I created, and I am actually really going to prevent others who inherit this mental continuum.
Well, no, you don't have to. You don't. Here, that's one way for a beginner to start thinking of your own.
Well, it's a good place.
That's what, I mean, I'm not even a beginner, so I mean, this is fantastic. It said that begin giving and taking with oneself. That means thinking of one's future suffering, maybe this lifetime, next week, thinking, may I experience that right now? Thinking of the advantages of that. So that can start to get you into a mindset where, yeah, this is good. It's kind of like, like say you had a lot of chores when you were a kid, and you think, okay, I'm going to do these now so later I can relax. Or you work when you're young so you can retire when you're old. Deferral of gratification, do we call it? Something like that. So one might start with that kind of self-interest in mind, and then extend it to future lives. By my experiencing this now, may my future lives be free of the suffering. But that's not the actual meditation, because the meditation here of Tonglen is out of compassion for others and wanting the self-cherishing thought to be diminished, right? There are a couple of factors. We talked about this before. It's good to remind ourselves of it. For Tonglen to be really, I think, really optimal, you can still practice, but to be optimal, I think, one has to do it out of compassion for others, and that has to be the motivating factor. One has to see the disadvantages of the self-cherishing thought and the advantages of cherishing others. So that empowers. That's why when when you see other people's suffering, you imagine other people's sufferings, you have the interest to take that on. Or in this case, when you're just experiencing something, first of all, you're not starting from a neutral state and trying to imagine some suffering or seeing the suffering of others. You're experiencing suffering. You think of other people's suffering, develop compassion for them, and that makes you want to free them from that suffering. And this is an opportunity. By my experiencing this suffering, may they be free of that. And here you don't have to imagine the suffering coming to you, because you already have some suffering. Taking that on and seeing the defect of the self-cherishing thought, taking it on the self-cherishing thought, and then with love, the two factors, compassion and love, wanting others to be happy, then giving your happiness and virtue to others.
If I'm off topic, I think the reason that I'm asking the question is because I'm always trying to think of how it's actually working, and I know I've been taught that, one of the things that happens when you become enlightened is you have omniscience. And so I imagine that somewhere, not in space or time, I don't know where exactly, there is this mental continuum that's enlightened. And then I'm also taught that enlightened beings can manifest in many ways to bring beings to enlightenment and give them happiness. Mm-hmm. And then I'm taught that when I become enlightened, I can liberate all beings. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, there is already an enlightened me that is actually manifesting as all these others, and that's how, when it gets me to this point, that's how I'm going to liberate all beings from suffering.
It's kind of an interesting step. That's kind of interesting. I never heard that before. But because you'll become enlightened one time, and that mind will be omniscient, it's kind of existing now and coming back to the present to get you into the future?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one before.
Manifesting as all beings. And that's how, when I become enlightened, that's how it's actually going to work, that I'm going to liberate all beings. Because
I'm not sure that...
You guys are all projections of my enlightened, your manifestations of my enlightened mind and projections of my ignorant mind.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that before. There could be something there, but I've never heard that before.
I'll let it go. Because
Okay.
it's one of those things that
Let's go on a couple more verses. Let's to another verse before we take a little break. so that otherwise, because we have a lot, we should be doing about 10 verses, more than 10 verses a day. So let's continue. So when I am 13, when I am powerless and suffer enslavement, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me. So wheel of sharp weapons coming back. For despising my inferiors and enslaving them. From now on I shall make slaves of my body and my life for the sake of others. So here the Tibetan, it says, when powerless and enslaved and tormented. It's sort of two things. Here it says suffer enslavement. Actually, there's two separate words. When I'm enslaved and tormented without, my own, by others, without any kind of power of my own. Do we have any situation like that? Or is that only like
When you're a kid, yes.
what? When you're a kid, well, you must have had an unhappy childhood. Oh, I mean,
Some kids feel like that.
poor thing. Do we feel sometimes like in your job? Do you sometimes feel that you have no choice? You have to do something, and you don't have freedom and so forth. Sometimes we feel enslaved in our relationships. So what's the cause of that? What's it say? For the cause of that is having despised others and used them for my own purposes, enslaved them, as it says here. Menla dangsheng, tangdus koayi. Pardon me?
It says despising inferiors.
Yeah, so that means those, it doesn't mean it, here it means men, it means that those that you are capable of feeling superior to. It may not be valid, but usually, like Shantideva said, usually a bodhisattva has to recognize that our minds work in this way, that we see three categories of beings. Those that are equals, that, that we feel competitiveness toward. Those that we think of ourselves as superior to, that are inferiors, that we develop pride and this kind of mind with respect to. And those that are superior to us, that we feel what? Jealousy and envy toward. So those, when Shantideva in the Bodhisattva Charya talks about equalizing and exchanging self and others, that's one of the things that one notices. Whenever those minds of competitiveness or pride and jealousy arise, it's with respect to those kind of categories, and one tries to put oneself in their shoes, how they're experiencing the situation. So here, inferiors is not making some kind of judgment that you really are superior. It means those that you are karmically have some reason to think that you're superior to. It doesn't mean that you are. By despising them, looking down upon them, criticizing them, and making them your servants, or it doesn't literally say enslaving them, but dendu can be also, I think can also mean like a servant, making them your servant, making them do things for you. So this is what we have done in the past, and as a result of that, now we're experiencing the same thing coming back to us. We're enslaved by others. It can be the same thing in the office. It can be the same thing in the office. Maybe we've been the office tyrant. Is that a term that you know? We've been the office tyrant in the past, and or the neighborhood tyrant, and we've had to have our way, and people have had to do things for us, and so that wheel comes back to us now. Pardon?
Question about this verse.
Yeah.
It talks about, animals as well. For example, if you use buffaloes to plow your field, you'd essentially be subjugating, these animals
Right.
for slave labor. So how does that kind of attitude relate towards animals that we would consider to be food or pets? animals that we would commonly.
Well, I don't think that would refer to that so much, especially as we treat them with kindness. We buy them the most expensive foods, more than the people in the street people sometimes have, isn't it? You buy a can of this stuff, cost $3 or something for your precious poodle. They have special hair salons for them and everything. So that's not quite treating them that way. But there are some people who treat their, well, if you just go to anywhere, sometimes they beat their animals, they use them to plow the fields without any kindness. Sometimes they're used as part of family, just like our family members help to support. So some people are caring toward their the buffalo or the animals that help to plow, but in general, that's not always the case. Just as animals are eaten by other animals, sometimes they're enslaved by humans. Let's take a break, only for the sake of changing the tape. We're animals. We preyed on others, and we've been utilized when we were animals, sometimes when we are animals, because we've enslaved other kind of animals and used them mercilessly. So that's kind of the wheel of, again, that's the wheel of sharp weapons coming back to us. So the resolution one would make from that, certainly for one's own sake, first of all, just thinking, without thinking of the Tonglen or the Bodhicitta part, just from now on I shall make slaves of my body. Well, this is partially that. I shall make slaves of my body and my life for the sake of others. My body and my life force, lusok. So those are the things we should enslave rather than so in other words, rather than cherishing myself and my body and my life force, thinking that's most important, thinking others are more important and enslaving. This is kind of the attitude of the Bodhisattva, that they enslave their own self-cherishing thought and they use their body as a servant for others, rather than vice versa, using others as a servant for oneself. So there's a lot to be said on any one of these, but as the length of the course is sort of set, we'll just try to go through as many as we can as the course continues. So it may be in the last 2 or 3 classes we'll go very fast if we spend a lot of time going on the details now, which is okay. Or we can do try to get more done each time. Yeah.
Could you say a little bit about the connection between this idea and vegetarianism or veganism? Is this where the roots are?
Well, the roots of not eating meat, I mean, is in nonviolence in general, right? You know, in the Buddhist tradition, sometimes some people believe all Buddhists are vegetarians. Are they? Are all Buddhists vegetarians?
No.
Dalai Lama apparently was on a plane one time, and he had a meal served to him, and he was eating some meat, and there was some chap sitting next to him, and said, "Oh, I thought all Buddhists were vegetarians." And His Holiness purportedly said, "Oh, only good ones." His Holiness is so. There's 3 levels of explanation about that. You know, in the Vinaya, in the discipline in the general monastic code that we talk about, the practice of the Shravakas and the hearers, the Shravakas and the Pratika Buddhas, their discipline, and also that which we take as the monastic discipline. It said that the monks asked the Buddha, the compassionate Buddha, what they should do if someone offered meat to them when they were on their alms round. And the Buddha said, if you did not request it, if you did not see it being killed, and if you had no doubt that it was killed for you, that the karma of consuming that was sufficiently removed, the karma of causing that death, and that one could accept that food and eat it. So in some Theravada countries, the monks do. Many of the Theravada countries, the monks do eat meat that's offered to them.
And in some, you can't not accept it.
Maybe you can't not accept that, huh?
It's offered as an alms.
So, In the Bodhisattva vehicle, in some of the sutras, it doesn't mention it every single place, but especially in the Lankavatara Sutra, it mentions that the Bodhisattva, someone who is a Bodhisattva, should, out of compassion for others, not eat meat. So in some of the Chinese countries, Chinese, do we have anyone here? No one in the class is Chinese, but in the Chinese tradition, in Taiwan and Hong Kong and other countries, it's like, eat meat? No, that's a vow. They think that's a vow, a monk's vow. It's not a monastic vow. If anything, it would be an interpretation from the Bodhisattva path, not to eat meat. If you're trying to develop, especially if you're trying to develop bodhicitta. In the tantric level, so on one level you can eat meat, and not like you just kill it for yourself. Obviously, in some circumstances you can eat it. On one level, you shouldn't eat meat at all. In the tantric level, it's said that again, that there are some cases where you should eat meat. That you create a karmic connection with beings that by, not by causing their death, but that their body elements can actually help in your own meditation, some kind of esoteric meditations. And so you create a karmic connection with them to quickly attain enlightenment. When you quickly attain enlightenment, you'll be able to benefit them more quickly than you would other beings that they had not had that karmic connection with you. So it's hard to say, when the great beings, some of the lamas or something, eat meat, it may be that they're at that level, that they're actually, you might say, well, you're supposed to be bodhisattva, you're not supposed to eat meat. They can fall back and say, no, I'm just a simple monk that was offered to me. But actually they might be practicing some tantric discipline. So it's not all Buddhists are vegetarians. Are all vegetarians Buddhists? No, that's not a thing. Just that's another story. Okay, so 14. When insulting remarks assault my ears, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for verbal offenses of slander and so forth. From now on I shall condemn my own verbal faults. So here it says slander and so forth. So what in the commentaries it says, it refers to all of the negative actions of speech. When it says insulting remarks, the Tibetan doesn't actually say insulting remarks. It says when unpleasant words arise to my ear. So that can mean lies, because those are unpleasant. It doesn't mean just insults that are the result of our having insulted others in the past, right, with harsh speech. It doesn't mean just that. This is talking about all of the negative actions of speech. So when, for instance, you might not say idle gossip is unpleasant, but say, for instance, you're trying to concentrate and someone comes to you and is, blah, blah, blahing. That also, in that circumstance, is also unpleasant, no? And so all of what are the four negative actions, the four, say, paths of negative action of speech? Bonnie, do you know? Yeah.
Lies.
Pardon me?
Lying.
Lying.
Harsh speech.
Harsh speech.
Divisive speech.
Divisive speech.
Idle chatter.
And idle chatter, right. So of those, which is supposed to be in general, the heaviest? Which of those can be the heaviest? Not dying. Oh, lying.
I thought it was idle chatter because you do it so much.
I'll make that one biggest. I can't put that finger up. You want to make that one biggest? I've heard that actually divisive speech. Why?
Because it creates more karma there. You're causing schism between people.
One particular kind of divisive speech can be one of the 5 actions of immediate retribution. That sometimes we call the heinous crimes. It actually doesn't. It's kind of an interpretation of what the term is. It means actions for which there is no demarcation before the result comes. So like after this lifetime, you're going to get the result of those actions, rebirth in the hell realms. Pardon?
I said, uh-oh.
Uh-oh. The 5 actions of immediate retribution is one way that it could be translated, maybe a little more precisely than heinous crime. Heinous crime isn't literally what they're called, but that's what people often think of them. You've heard of that, right? What are the 5 actions of immediate retribution?
Killing your mother.
Killing your mother. Killing your father.
Causing a schism in the son.
Causing a schism through your verbal action of divisive speech in the son. Killing in our heart.
Drawing blood from a Buddha with evil intent.
Drawing blood, causing blood to flow from the Buddha with evil intent.
I've heard that the schism, the way that that's defined is actually so heavy that it's not like, is that true? Like, that it's not something that you would do just by getting a couple of monks and nuns to have even a fist fight. Right? It's something.
Well, no, it would be pretty similar, but the actual schism of the Sangha only takes place when the Buddha is alive, that actual action of immediate retribution. But it doesn't mean that the other actions, therefore, they're not heavy. Like someone would say, oh, I went to kill that person, I shot them, and I blew several holes in them, but then I died before them. If I die before them, it's not the full action of killing, is it? Well, it's not the full action of killing, but it's pretty darn close, It's still pretty heavy, right? So, the action of immediate retribution of schism in the Sangha only takes place when the Buddha's alive. At a certain point in his ministry, when Maitreya comes, there'll be some point like this also, when the followers of the Buddha are caused for temporarily to be in some kind of schism because of some verbal incitement by others, divisive speech. So that's that one. But still, that's very, very heavy. So sometimes that's said to be the heaviest. It doesn't mean every kind of divisive speech is heavier than lying. As Jimmy said, lying is in general, one sense, heaviest of those in general. But also insulting, harsh speech. Here it says insulting. It doesn't say that in the words. It says minyamba means not pleasant. Unpleasant sounds arise, unpleasant words arise to our ears. It doesn't mean only having heard something insulting. Maybe that word could be implied, I don't know, but it means unpleasant. So this is the result of our own similar verbal offenses in the past. So it makes, like say for instance, when something hurts you, when someone says some words that hurt your heart, you can start to recognize how painful it is. Then you can use that situation to imagine how others feel. You can start to use that situation to develop compassion for others. It's a matter of utilizing, rather than just wanting to be free of this suffering for oneself, you can imagine, ooh, this is how others feel when I say harsh words to them. So that can help you to be more hesitant to say harsh words in the future, once you know what that suffering is like. And you start to develop more your compassion for others, your desire for them to be free of suffering, then knowing that harsh words cause you suffering, you can pause and be hesitant to express them to others. When insulting remarks assault my ears, when unpleasant words assault my ears, arise to my ears, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for verbal offenses of slander and so forth. It means these 4 negative actions of speech. From now on, I shall condemn my own verbal faults. So condemn here is actually this word of, criticizing. Rather than criticizing others, I will criticize my own faults. So again, rather than taking the outer people, outer enemies, as an object of criticism or subjugation, or thinking of them as your enemy, thinking the inner enemies, in this case the verbal faults. Of course, they're going to be, what are they going to come about because of? These verbal faults of lying and divisive speech and so forth. They come about because of ego-grasping and self-cherishing thought, right? So that you can actually see those as the enemy also. So you're gonna take these. I'm gonna condemn my own verbal faults. I'm gonna criticize those. Does that make sense?
Mm.
When I'm reborn in impure land, it is a weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for always cultivating impure vision. From now on, I shall cultivate only pure vision. So in the commentaries, it mentions that this verse is touching more on, can be talking about both sutra, but particularly seems to have a certain tantric flavor to it, because one of the causes to be born, the main cause, the lamas say, to be born in the Pure Land is not just reciting, some mantra or so forth, or even transference of consciousness. The main cause is to have pure view, pure vision, pure view. Without that, it's very difficult to be born in the Pure Land, whatever other kind of cooperative conditions you create. So simply saying, one thinks, I'm going to be born in Amitabha's Pure Land by saying lots of mantras or requesting prayers. All of those are causes and conditions to be born in the Pure Land. But without having pure view, without creating the karma to see a Pure Land, that you don't have the main cause to be born there.
I like the first Dalai Lama's quote. See all beings as light beings, as mandala. Hear all sounds, echoes of the mystic mantra. See all thoughts as...
Yeah, it'd be good if we could practice that.
Wouldn't it?
So, so we're, right now, are we in an impure land? Or
Depends on your point of view.
is this pure land to you?
Well,
What do you mean it depends on your pure point of view?
Well, wouldn't it be if you were enlightened, it would all be bliss?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about you. Are you enlightened?
No.
Okay, then for you, I'm asking you, this, where we're born now, is this a...
No, it sucks.
Not to put too fine a line on it. Okay.
I think, a lot of times I think, yeah, this is, I wouldn't want to live in a lot of other places. This is pretty.
This is pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Some people say that, they find some place, that their dream place to live, I don't know, Malibu, or I don't know, where would it be? Hawaii or Kauai or something like this. This is the Pure Land. Actually, maybe they have the karma in certain circumstances temporarily that certain enjoyment arises. But to be born in a place where you perceive always faults, it depends on your mind. Other people may not perceive them, just as you're saying. For some people, like for Oma, this place might seem very much like a Pure Land. For her, her karma is such that this particular percent doesn't mean that's all her karma. She may have other karmas that's rising that are problematic, but for her, maybe at this time, this appears, she has the karma to experience this as pure. But if she were to go to Newark, excuse me, Newark, no offense, Newark, if she were to go some other place, maybe she wouldn't experience that as pure.
In Iraq right now, I would not see it as a Pure Land.
So that's not due to pure view, probably. It's due to some karma that has arisen because of having some pure views in some circumstances in the past, that she's able to be here and experience this. So when we experience something that's impure, it's the result of our cultivating, as it says here, cultivating or meditating. The words are sort of familiarizing or meditating continually. What does it say here? Does it say continually?
Customizing yourself to impure vision.
Yeah. Where does the word here? For always. I say continually, for some period of time, getting used to that, accustomizing ourselves with that kind of impure vision. So always to spend one's time, I think this is something that we do, probably all of us. Oh, maybe not you. And certainly we tend in our lives to look at other people's faults There's a certain mindset, my own mindset, maybe not yours. The person has that fault, this person has this fault. So it's said that it's much more important. That's not the right way to use the Dharma, certainly. Whatever Dharma knowledge that we have, if we start to use that to point out the faults of others, that's complete aberration. We should use the Dharma like a mirror. You use the mirror to clean your own face. So you should use the mirror of the Dharma to clean your own faults, and not to spend your time inappropriately trying to analyze the faults of others. Out of compassion, if there's a reason for doing so, or whatever. But like the Bodhisattva practice is to try to see others in good light. I remember once going to my teacher, Lama Yeshe. One of the other monks was getting under my skin, and I was saying, oh, he's so-and-so does this. And Lama says, he means well, dear. He said, they means well. Lama always had this very endearing way of saying, they means well, dear. So to have that kind of sort of basis in the back of our mind that's related with bodhicitta, to remind ourselves, everyone means well. They want to be happy. They may not be skillful in bringing that about, and they may, that may be, some of their actions may be abrasive to us or something, but rather than having impure view and starting attributing faults, because we do so with a mind that's projecting true existence to that. That's because we still have grasping to true existence. So when we start thinking that there are faults, ordinarily we're thinking they're truly existent faults, which is not the case. They can all be removed. Any kind of, even if they were conventionally true, and sometimes they're not true at all. Sometimes they're not faults at all. Say, for instance, someone tries to offer advice to us or criticizes us. And we respond with anger, but, and resentment and, what are you calling me? What about you? Like this. And sometimes the people have done that for our own benefit. This is just like when kids are growing up. They get very angry at their parents. And their parents try to tell them they should go to school, they shouldn't go out with these people. The parents may have actually some wisdom and knowledge and actually have some semblance of good intention, but because the children just take that, as some kind of oppression on their part, they come back with bad words. So when I'm reborn in an impure land, as we are now, even though you might not think of this as impure, because we do see faults, we don't see things as pure. It's a weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for always cultivating impure vision. From now on, I shall cultivate only pure vision. One of my teachers, who I only had the opportunity of meeting a few times, but I heard so many stories of the great Serkon Dorji Chang, who's not Serkon Senchab Rinpoche, but Serkon Dorji Chang, who was supposed to be the reincarnation of Marpa, Lotsawa. Serkon Senchab Rinpoche was supposed to be Dharmadoti, who was Marpa's son in the previous life. So they had a relationship over many lives. Do you know this student-disciple, disciple-teacher relationship, sometimes even father-son? So Serkon Dorji Chang supposedly, he took the aspect of having epilepsy, the last life. Some pictures of him sitting as a monk like this, with some kind of, what's it called? Paralysis. But when it came to some very, very sensitive pujas being done, or what they call torgap, the tossing of the torma into the fire at the New Year's pujas to avert the obstacles for the next year and things like this, only certain lamas were called on by the government to do this, those that had perfect concentration and great tantric powers. And so they would call on Serkon Dorji Chang. He was one of the short list of lamas that could do this. So when he would come, supposedly when he would come to this kind of ceremony, and some people would be kind of looking, oh gosh, look at this guy, he's paralysis, how could he be high lama, He would get up there and he'd say, they don't call me Dorji Chang for nothing. I like that line. They don't call me Dorji. Sometimes you hear that name given to various people out of respect. You know, we call our tantric gurus, you know, Dorji Chang, as they are, try to visualize him as Vajradhara, but he was actually Vajradhara. So one time, Sirkun Dorji Chang was in his room, and one of his disciples came and saw a bottle of beer on Rinpoche's table. And of course, the monk's discipline is not to have any intoxicants, certainly not to drink beer. And the person went, you know, Rinpoche, you shouldn't drink, Ben, naughty monk, something, I don't know, somehow he implied that Rinpoche was not doing something right. And so Sirkun Dorji Chang took him by the hand downstairs. They went down to I think it's called the Bagmati River in Kathmandu. Does any of you know? Do you know this right by, it was about a mile, I think, or I don't know how far from Swayambhu. There are some parts that are closer. And he went down to the river where the cremations take place, where the pigs make their excrement, and just dirt and broken shards, garbage and everything, corpses going by. And Rinpoche picked up a piece of excrement or some sordid kind of substance from the ground. Took the aspect of great bliss. And then the person realized, this was a person who, because of their cultivation of pure view, actually had achieved a state where this was no longer even alcohol to them. There was no fault whatsoever. That's the kind of state that when one reaches that state, there aren't any infractions of your vows by anything like that. But that's not something that we can emulate. It's not just something you can just pick up. You can try to go home, just, okay. You know, it's not something you can do because you will die if you eat that, you know. So that's kind of also when Naropa first met his guru Tilopa, you know the story. Naropa was a great pundit. You know who Naropa was? You've heard the name Naropa, this name of various places. Naropa was eventually the guru of Marpa. Lotsawa was the guru of Milarepa and so forth. And we talk about the 6 yogas of Naropa and so forth. Naropa was a great scholar and practitioner, incredibly brilliant, one of the greatest scholars of his time. But he, when he was giving a lecture once, he was some lady in the crowd, some old, as it said, one translator, I think they translate, one old crone, I don't know what a crone is, in the audience, would came up to him and said, is what you're teaching us, you understand the words of what you're teaching us? And he said, of course I understand the meaning of the words. And she laughed and she danced, she was happy. And then she said, do you understand the meaning of the words that you've been teaching us? He says, of course I understand the meaning, the meaning behind them. And she started crying and pulling out her hair and looking very distressed. And then she disappeared. And he sort of got the feeling like, uh-oh, maybe, I understand this intellectually, but there's something beyond that. So he sought his own guru. He had intimations that his guru was out there somewhere called Tilopa. So he sought Tilopa, gave up all of his positions and sought him. At one point he went to one area. He was always asking, where's Tilopa? Do you know anyone named Tilopa? And one place, my guru, do you know the great tantric adept Tilopa? And one person said, the great tantric adept Tilopa. But there's some beggar that's living down the river that lives on dead fish called Tilopa. I don't know if that's who you mean. So he went down there, and at first, his vision, he had impure vision of this. At first, it looked like just someone who was eating fish, biting them off and throwing them into the river, throwing them into the fire or whatever. And then he asked him, are you Tilopa? Are you my guru? And Tilopa said something like, yes. And suddenly the hair stood on end, and he had complete confidence and was able to see everything that he did, even through these, what were they called, the 12 trials of Naropa, when Tilopa would send him off to do these incredible things. Like if you've ever been sent off to teach at some Dharma center, it's nothing compared to the 12 deeds of Naropa, Sometimes I think Lama was saying, I feel so bright. These are my 12 deeds, but nothing compared to 12 deeds of Naropa. So by having pure view, you can create the karma then to see things purely. And there's a great advantage of that in Tantra. So rather than seeing faults in people, when you do see things impurely, and you're born in a place that you only experience as filled with faults and impure things, just problematic, that is a result of your impure view in the past. So try in the future to cultivate just, only, pure view, pure vision. And that takes a great deal of explanation, but we're not going to go into all of that now.
How do you do this without it becoming a whitewash?
Without becoming a whitewash?
Yeah, there's a gray area there, obviously, like, how do you develop it? Because, some people is Tulopa, some people is not Tulopa.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone thought he was Tulopa, but some people thought he was Tulopa the beggar. Some people thought he was Tulopa the tantric guru,
Right.
Pure view, I don't know, pure view comes about because of one level, beginning level that we can talk about here. Pure view comes about not looking for faults and therefore not embellishing them, not exaggerating the faults. The more you start to see faults and the more that you pay inappropriate attention to them, the more your mind gets enmeshed in negativity. We talk about, you know the term inappropriate attention? Have you heard of that before? Yeah. Inappropriate attention in the sutra tradition, it's talked about one of the causes of the delusions, why the delusions arise. We have the seeds of the delusions. We have some object that can be an object of the delusion, ice cream or chocolate or money or beautiful person or high position or something. And if you pay attention to that in the wrong way, or inappropriate way, that is to say, you say, oh, whoa, you start thinking about that in different ways. That's called inappropriate attention. So, when the more that you pay attention to faults, you start to get involved in them and thinking that they're truly existent and that's a problem for you and how much better it would be if that fault wasn't there, and you might find ways to try to eliminate it and criticize and so forth. 16. When I am separated from helpful and loving friends, it is a weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for luring others' companions. From now on, I shall not separate others from their companions. So I just, one word here, luring, and more like, what did I say? Drawing away. In Tibetan, it's ka tangba. Tangba means to draw. Ka means by the mouth, like taking others away. Doesn't have, lure sounds like you're kind of being alluring. I don't know, to lure, does it have that sense that you do something attractive or something? I don't know.
No, fish.
Yeah, to lure, yeah. But you put some, they're not going to come to the hook unless you put something attractive, like a worm on it or something, right?
Right.
Yeah, like
Okay,
next.
so I don't think it means just that. It means when you draw others away, it might be, like for instance, I was thinking as an example of this, the marketing procedures today when big corporations try to lure the people from the other company, giving them higher salaries and so forth. It seems completely common sense today, isn't it? Good business. Give them better perks, get them for us.
Nice one.
Who's, like baseball players or something like that, or hockey players, offer them more money or something like that, and they'll work for you. And sometimes when we are separated from our friends, who are both different kinds of friends, some that help us, some that are mutually affectionate toward us, when we're separated from them, in this case because of someone else drawing them away or some other interest drawing them away, this is the result of our own negative karma of having caused others to be separated in the past, maybe for our own self-interest, drawing them to us. So here, I think there's another verse that's coming up that's talking also something similar to this This is a little bit related to the experience I was talking about. I've mentioned many times about my baby left me. Right, the root verse of all of the blues music. Whenever you find yourself separated from loving companions, it can cause your mind to become unhappy. To get the blues and so forth. So rather than falling prey to that, to use that situation to recognize what the cause was, wisdom arises. You don't inappropriately look at that situation and cause yourself to become miserable. I think it's very, very useful. When we use these various temporal antidotes, thinking of the karma, that's one of the ways of taking our attention away from that situation, looking at it inappropriately. Our inappropriate attention, paying attention to something in the wrong way, causing our delusions to arise. Instead, taking our attention away from that and looking at something which is factually correct. This is the result of my past karma. And I can actually utilize this. I can feel some joy that my karma is being purified, that I can actually hear. From now on, I shall not separate others from their companions, thinking of making a resolution not to create the causes. Some of these are more related with Tonglen, the actual final line. Some of them are not, sound more like different of the opponent forces. I'm not sure am I making any sense. 17. When all the holy ones are displeased with me, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for casting them aside and resorting to bad companions. This is verse 17, right? From now on I shall renounce bad companions. I shall give up. So when all the holy ones, Dampa Tamche, all excellent beings. So it's not just that one, for instance, sometimes the people that are excellent, there might be someone who's unhappy with us, who shows displeasure in our behavior or in us, one of our gurus. But here, when everyone, sort of like everyone is sort of down on us, this is an indication, this is the result of my own past actions coming back to me, the wheel of sharp weapons. For in the past, ignoring the advice and the counsel of excellent beings who gave us counsel, instead resorting to our old bad friends, our bowling companions, or our drug, the people we used to hang out and smoke with, or whatever, or people that are we call bad companions, bad company. Doesn't mean like that everyone would agree that they're obnoxious. They might look very nice. It doesn't mean that they need a shower or something like that, or they speak coarsely. But their minds are inclined toward something antithetical to the spiritual path to some degree, and that can divert us away. So even though the Guru told us to do one thing in the past, and holy beings told us excellent advice, other people said, don't listen to them, let's take it easy, let's go down and go to the river, or let's take the day off, something like this. Or just for a long period of time. Bad companions, I'm trying to think of another word, and companion's not the right word that's coming to my mind. What's another word to say for that? Acquaintances.
It's a little bit more than that, isn't it, though?
What were you going to say, Bonnie?
Wouldn't it also be just like your negative habits of mind, or not just real people?
Outer people. Can be, and I think perhaps Geshe-la says in the commentary here, we have different kinds of bad companions. Some of them are outer companions. That's kind of what's being referred to here, but one can understand it definitely as the following the advice of our negative minds. Right in the last decade or so, there's been very popular these multiple personality disorders. It's almost like that, like the bad companions, like, what was that, Primal Fear or something like that? I read that novel many, many years ago, and I thought, they'll never make a movie out of this, and then they made a movie out of that one. with Richard Gere. Do you remember that? Edward Norton played this guy who was purportedly had these voices coming up and everything like that, multiple personality. What those are, I don't know. It could be sometimes those are spirits, can be fragmented parts of a person's personality, perhaps. But certainly we do have impulses that do come up, like bad companions. So this definitely can refer to that also. So in the past, instead of paying attention to excellent advice of excellent beings, here holy ones, we can say excellent ones, we gave that away. We gave up the advice of others and followed the bad advice of these bad companions, whether they were outer or inner companions. From now on, I shall renounce bad companions. What does that mean? Does that mean you shouldn't talk to your old, I don't know, playmates, people that you used to play around with that are maybe, from Dharma's point of view, bad companions? You shouldn't spend any time with them?
You just shouldn't invest, right?
What does it say here? I shall renounce pongba. Or something. What? You should?
You shouldn't invest in those activities.
Yeah, I think. Pardon? Renounce benevolent friends? Malevolent. Malevolent. Okay. There's another L in there somewhere, I think. Malevolent. Malevolent? Is that a word? Malevolent. Malevolent. Malevolent friends. Malicious friends. Yeah, but even when we say bad companions, it doesn't mean bad companions are obviously malevolent. Circumstantial Rinpoche used to say, the real Mara that comes and disturbs you, outer Mara, doesn't always come with big horns and fangs and things like that. They sometimes come with a smiling face and say, oh man, let's take it easy, let's take the day off, have this, shoot this, whatever. So the Mara, malevolent friends, are not necessarily easily observed. If you were going to do retreat, or if you were going to practice Dharma, and someone came to you and said, "Oh, come on, you can do that anytime. Let's go. I got free ticket to Hawaii. Let's, you could do your retreat next year or some other time." That might be more a malevolent friend. Okay. Have you been to Hawaii? I don't know.
He says that the principal ones he's talking about are the inner ones.
The principal companions.
When we're talking about bad associates, the principal ones we're referring to are your inner companions.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, sort of the overtly what's being referred to in the words of the text sounds like outer companions, but just when we talked about the Maras, remember we talked about the various kinds of Mara, demons? There are some that are outer. People often attribute their problems to outer spirits, and it's some spirit influence or this or that, some outer Maras. The main Maras are our own Maras. The main ones are the delusions, our ego grasping and by association, the self-cherishing thought. So these two companions we've been associating with from beginningless time, and they're the ones that generally cause us to give up on the advice of our gurus. Our gurus tell us to do something that actually is very, very good for us, but because of the following the bad companions, the counsel of our self-cherishing thought and our egoistic grasping to true existence, this true ego grasping, we don't like those words. So we give up the words of the guru. So we follow these other ones. I think at first, there are different levels you can read these. At first, you have to begin to give up the outer bad companions before you can start to recognize the inner ones, unless you happen to have some imprints from the past. So there's certainly, one can understand it as a gradual kind of development. Give up the outer bad companions and then give up the inner bad companions. So it doesn't mean that you say, "Oh, you terrible people, I'm not associating with you anymore." You still have compassion for people because this is the point of the whole point of developing bodhicitta, to feel, to understand that all of these beings can change, that whatever their malevolent intent right now or their lack of being perfect friends is something that's temporary. And these are beings that you can lead to enlightenment, but you shouldn't rely on them in that terms of companionship. Because when you rely on people like that for companionship, you start to pick up their bad habits. And one of my teachers, I think Geshe Darga, used to say, when you hang out with people for some time, and even at first they're drinking beer or taking drugs or something. At first you say, no. I go, no. You pass it around. I'm not having. You stay long enough. Sometime they say, oh well, let me let me try. So sooner, you hang out with people who steal or cheat on their income tax or something like this. Enough, and you hear about this, sooner or later you start to pick up those habits. So we're affected by our bad companions. And certainly we're affected by, as Geshe was saying, the bad companions in our mind. 18. When others sin against me by exaggeration or deprecation, it is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for reviling the holy ones. From now on I shall not revile others by exaggeration or deprecation. It sounds a bit technical language. Huh? There's these two words, drokur, at the beginning of the sentence. Dro is short for drotok, which means to exaggerate. Actually, dro means feather, and tok means to attach. So it's like adding a feather, putting something that wasn't really there. It's like putting on a mask. That's like superimposition. That's another way that we translate that. Superimposing something that's not there. Kurdeb means to deprecate. That means to underestimate, or what's another way of saying it? With something that is there and saying that it isn't. Devalue. Devalue or not value, something like that. So these are the two things that are being talked about. So this verse I found, in just linguistically, one of the most challenging, because it's not, there are two different versions of the text in Tibetan. One of them has a genitive case about others. One of them has instrumental case. It looks like it's saying, when others sin against me by exaggeration or deprecation. Literally, it doesn't say that. It just says, literally, I'll read you what like the first line says. Drokur shengi diksok jungwese. So when, if we take the instrumental case, when others collect negativities, exaggeration or deprecation. It doesn't say to me, but it sounds like it's to me. It's not sure whether that means others are... there's two interpretations. One interpretation is that when we are blamed, that is, others exaggerate or deprecate us for misdeeds of others that are committed by others. Or another way interpreting it is, as is here, this translator took it. This is not necessarily how Geshe Sopa was commenting. When others create the negativity of exaggeration or deprecation. Do you see a difference? Slightly, just linguistically. One way you can say the others of the first line are the ones that are accusing me, deprecating me, or superimposing faults upon me that are not really there. Or another way of understanding it is others are creating negativities for which I am blamed. I am by someone else, even a third party. Anyway, that's not so important. It's just, if you happen to be, some of you sometime might be looking at the Tibetan. When others sin against me, and I am falsely accused, in other words, that someone exaggerates faults upon me or deprecates inequalities I have, it's the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for reviling the holy ones, excellent ones, Dampa Nam. Like we say, Lama Dampa, we say holy gurus or excellent gurus. Dampa can also mean, we say Sad Dharma, the the holy Dharma. In Sanskrit, we say dampe che, the same word dampa. So it can mean the excellent, can mean excellent ones or holy ones. So in the past, we've put other people who are really excellent and worthy of esteem, we've put them down. We've reviled them or we've criticized them. And as a karmic result of that, sometimes we are falsely accused in the future of things that we don't have. Maybe justifiably accused, but oftentimes people exaggerate and either they add some fault to us that we don't really have, or they don't recognize some quality that we have. This is because that we haven't valued holy ones in the past, our holy gurus, you know. When we see, you know, sometimes when people hear Lama Supa Rinpoche and their mind is negative, they might, you know, criticize his grammar or his cough or something like that. Have you heard? Reviling like that. So that creates karma then to have that kind of situation come back against one. So from now on, I shall not revile others by exaggerating or deprecating. This is these two words, trokur, trotok. And 19, I'll just go a couple more here. When my material necessities waste away, they sort of are used up, in other words. It is the weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me for scorning others' necessities. This word, you know, from now on I shall provide for others' necessities. So this word scorning, I'm not sure if that is a good, if that works for you. Does that work for you? Scorning, what does that mean, scorning others' necessities?
Not valuing.
Not being concerned.
Oh, okay. That's that. Not appreciating. What was it? Not
appreciating their need for.
Not yeah. Okay. That kind of this word is this kind of nice. Kedu sepa in Tibetan. Ke means difference. Se means to slay or kill. So it means when you kill the difference or the distinction of something. Ways of translating that are to feel contempt. Not to care about something, you know. Oh, keo mare. There's no. Doesn't matter. So, kind of the implication is not taking care of others' necessities, or because in different ways. Maybe you don't see them as something that you can't take yourself, so you steal them, you use them yourself. Or you just don't think that they need things, and you don't necessarily give things to them. In either case, if you've actually consciously stolen things from people, taken them away, or you've neglected, you haven't taken care of their belongings. You know, like say the Dharma Center. That's one of the things the monks and nuns have to be very careful about, not misusing the resources of the Sangha. It's said to be very, very heavy karma, or of other beings in general. Misusing them, either stealing them, misusing them, or not giving them when one does have the chance to do so. This brings about a situation where your own material resources, your own necessities of life waste away. Like say, for instance, what's it say when you live in a country that used to have a lot of oil and now it no longer has oil? You know, of course we could say that you pumped it all out of the ground, or you used to, your crops used to be very, very fantastic, and now the soil has been played out and the crops no longer grow as well as they did before. The trees no longer give the same kind of fruit. These are also kind of examples like that.
I have a question.
Yes?
So would the karma reflect if you had been careless with possessions of others that were not so important, with things of yours that are not so important, deteriorate, or if you were careless with people's basic necessities, then your basic necessities?
Yeah, these are talking about basic necessities. This word.
Oh, I was talking only about necessities.
These are kind of things that are like the things that we ordinarily use in everyday life. Koa in Tibetan, sort of like, here it does say material necessities, things of everyday life. So I think you're right. I think your intuition is right. If there's a certain kind of karmic retribution, the more of use or of essential nature something is to others that we misuse or we steal, that's going to have a greater repercussion on us in the sense that there'll be something essential to us that's misused. That's my understanding. From now on, I shall provide for others' necessities. So rather than misusing them or not taking care of them or stealing them or despising them or scorning them, as it says here, I will actually provide for others' necessities. This is the action of the bodhisattvas. You know, like Nagarjuna said in the letter to the king, his friend, when the king, he was asked is that seconds or minutes?
6 minutes.
Oh, okay. I thought in the TV studios. 6 minutes left. Let's see. He was giving advice to a friend of his who was a king about what he could do. And he said, along the roads, you should put plant trees for people to take rest and place urns of water and medicines and bandages there for them, for the people, to provide the necessities, the rest houses and everything. So, if we help to build a Dharma center like this, to provide the necessities for people's spiritual sustenance, I think that's one of the causes that can help to purify the negative karma of of having scorned that in the past, and not having taken care of others' Dharma necessities in the past that would make us impoverished in the future, make us, we would have Dharma there for some time and then it would sort of disappear, it would waste away. So this is obviously some way to help to avoid that also. 20, when my mind is unclear, this is what I was joking with Venerable before, she looked like she was a little bit sleepy tonight. When my mind is unclear, my heart is sad. And another text that came from Dharamsala, in the Tibetan it has it opposite. When my mind is sad and my heart unclear, basically means the same thing. When my mind is unclear and my heart is sad, it is a weapon of my own evil deeds turned upon me. Here it says, for causing others to sin. But that's not what it says in the Tibetan. Literally, it means... Okay, I'll just read it first. From now on, I shall renounce contributing to others sinning. This is another slightly problematic one grammatically. When my mind is unclear and my heart is sad. So the commentaries say this is talking about when it's very difficult to practice virtue. Like say for instance, the idea of coming to lecture is like, oh, I'm too tired to go to I think I'll miss tonight. But I'll catch up on The Sopranos. Or to come, like me, very difficult to stay up with Rinpoche all night, practice Dharma, but if I were to go back to my room, it would be very easy to watch a video or something like that, Do you know what I'm saying? When it's easy to practice non-virtue and more difficult to practice virtue, this is the weapon of, and when you're unhappy, someone said Geshe said chronic depression. This is kind of like, without any particular reason, your mind is unhappy, the mind is unclear, and it's very easy to practice negativity. This is the weapon of my own, the wheel of sharp weapons coming back for here, literally it says accumulating negativities with regard to other beings. One of the translations says accumulating negativities in other lives. The word kewo or kewa. Kewa could mean other lives. One translation in Tibetan has. One says kewo, mean beings, other beings. But doesn't say causing others to sin. I don't think. It literally means collecting negativities with regard to others. From now on, I shall renounce contributing to others' sinning. So one interpretation of that is by not being a good example to others and not keeping one's vows and so forth, if you're talking about the Sangha, then you can cause others to criticize you and therefore create negative karma. I wanted to get to 23 because 23 is my lucky number, but I think we better stop here. I was born on the 23rd. I always try to sit in seat 23. It's just completely superstition, right? But it's maybe sometimes numbers work. Let's try to just briefly dedicate the merits that we created. As we did before, try to calm your mind. See if you can recall the continuity of that clear light nature. And then with discriminating wisdom, remember that we've created some virtuous karma today, not just by the action of participating, but through the motivation that we had for participating tonight. Very powerful karma. And wishing or aspiring that these karmic seeds not ripen just once in the future, in some pleasure within cyclic existence, some relief, but may they become contributing causes to my spiritual development, to the contributing cause eventually to my achievement of enlightenment. Aspiring in that way, they can't be exhausted until that goal is reached. It might still be, with ordinary mind, ordinary dedication, they might still be destroyed by anger. And then seal that, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche has been reminding us the last couple of days, seal that within the emptiness